I was about 12. I found myself facing conflict I think a lot of Americans face, which is choosing between science and religion. And so this society, I think, it makes you choose sides, especially if you're scientifically minded. You know, as mentioned, I got my degree in engineering, so I'm a very math and science oriented person. And so I was felt from a very young age faced with this choice: do I believe in God or do I believe in evolution? And so I began to study a little bit, kind of my family's history, my family's faith history, and the history of Christianity and the Bible, and the history of the church. And the more I studied, the more troubled I was, and I never really had a strong personal relationship with God. And on the other hand, I looked at science, and to me it seemed very humble that you know, everything we believe is based on evidence, and every theory is by definition disprovable. So the truth, you're always perpetually seeking to get closer and closer to the truth through science. And around that age, around 12 or 13, I left my parents' faith, and I was declared myself an atheist. Still going to church on Christmas and Easter, so I don't upset them. But I didn't believe in God. And this is the way I was until I was about 15. When I was 15, my neighbor, his name is Michael Dan, who was also my classmate in school, he became Muslim. And before that, Mike and I were really different people. He was into rap music, and he had a lot of friends that actually did really bad stuff, and I just pretended to do bad stuff. I was into skateboarding, I had long hair and chains and punk music and ska and all that. And I guess the perpetual struggle of teenagers to figure out who they are. But when Mike became Muslim, as Brother Naeem, indicated, I think, with his own story, he started to change a lot, and it came from the inside. And normally, growing up, with someone, you tell someone got religious, it's like an insulting thing. It's like, oh, she got religious, like she thinks she's better than us now, or he thinks he's better than us now. But with Mike, when he became Muslim, it was very genuine, it was very sincere. And I just started noticing these changes slowly. We'd have tennis practice. We were both on a tennis team. And he'd have to go off and pray. And I was like, what is that, And I would be watching him and started learning a little bit. And what really struck me was the beginning of junior year, there was one class that only the real go-getters in our high school would take, which is AP European History. And I walk in, and he's sitting there, and I was like, Mike, I think you're lost, because he's always a slacker. He's a smart guy, but he's always a slacker. And he's like, no, I'm taking this class. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's when we really started to get to talk and get to know each other. Partially because I moved to Massachusetts when I was 13, so I never fit in any one clique strongly. And on Mike's side, because he became Muslim and he couldn't really be around those people doing drugs and drinking anymore, he didn't have this core group of friends he was hanging around. So we started growing close. And I thought, to be honest, I thought Islam was kind of like Hinduism at first, as Eastern religion. It had a lot of gods and a moon god and things like this. And I was really ignorant. I mean, even in this class, AP European History, I'm 16 years old. I had a debate with Mike that I thought all Arabs were from Saudi Arabia, hence why they're called Arabs. And people from Egypt are not Arabs, they're Egyptians, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, my history teacher was aghast at that. So, to move forward with the story, I was impressed with Islam. That is a very simple religion. I mean, it made a lot of sense to me. There's one God, that there's prophets. None of the prophets share divinity, but rather they're a chain of prophets, one after the other. And I thought, if Moses and Jesus could be prophets, why not Muhammad, peace be upon them all? And then I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and that book really changed my life. When I read that, I sort of did hate white people a little.
That must have been difficult.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to be like Brother Malcolm. I wanted to put the bow tie on, and I wanted to be standing up for something. And I was like, but I don't really believe in God, so I don't know how I can do that. He says in there, if you take one step towards God, God takes 2 steps towards you. Now, I'm a rationally minded, science-oriented person, so that's a hypothesis. So I'm going to, of course, test out the hypothesis. So I stopped eating pork and going to parties with alcohol with the intention that this is true. May God guide me to it, and if it's not true, I'm going to go back to in the summer. I'll have a big party. And so I just continued to learn more and more about Islam. And I had the opposite experience I had with my own parents' faith, in that the more I learned about Islam and the more I questioned it, the more I found myself being defeated by the arguments of Islam. And, you know, first I was trying to convince Mike to become atheist. I was like, he figured out Christianity wasn't truth. Now I'm just not getting one more step there. And I found myself full of questions that couldn't be answered. Who was the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? Was he a madman? Was he a magician? You know, like, I couldn't figure it out. What was he seeking? Power, money? None of those arguments hold up. And I studied the Quran, and I said, is it really possible that this book came from 1,400 years ago from a man in the desert that couldn't read or write, that lived in a society that wasn't even considered really a civilization? And 100 years after his death, it spread from Spain to India. And you know, I kept looking at everything. I said, it seems too perfect. And then I read about some things we call scientific miracles in the Quran. And when I read those, I found I really was flabbergasted of how to explain this religion in this book. And I reflected on something I never thought of before in my life, and I don't think many teenagers do, but what's going to happen when I die? You know, and there are all these stages when you're in high school, you're taking SATs and getting ready for college, and college you're getting ready for grad school, and then getting a job, and then getting married and having kids and retirement, and all these things you're preparing for, but they're not certainties. But there's one certainty I never had thought of to prepare for before in my life, which was death. And I thought, if I die, I want to die as a Muslim. And so that's when I became Muslim, which was all I realized, I'm going to stop here, is all I did was I just got on the ship. And then it really set sail. Then the journey really began, which I didn't know at the time, but 10 years later I can definitely, the journey since I became Muslim is much more interesting than, I think, becoming Muslim. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Mr. Haaris Ahmad. Haaris currently works as an attorney for Wayne County Corporation Counsel.
That's right.
He was born in New York. He's a alum, University of Michigan. He's an active member of the community and the owner of I Learned Online, which is an online tutoring company. Haaris Ahmad.
Thanks. So today, you got to excuse me for my voice. I just lost it, I think, yesterday, and so, of course, that was perfect timing. But usually I'm a lot louder, but hopefully you can hear me. I'm just going to reflect on, my understanding of this was, to reflect on our experiences, our similar and different experiences as Muslims in America and as American Muslims. And so I'm going to share some of my reflections and my experience with you. I was born in New York, as Dr. Jackson mentioned, and in the Bronx. Lived in, my mother worked over there. She was a physician there, and so, I was born in the hospital that she worked at. And, but my mom, we moved out. Well, I should say that my father came to New York in 1963, so actually before that 1965 act. So he was here before that law. So he had been here for 13 years before he got married to my mom, and then they had me soon after. I was, in fact, their first anniversary gift. So my birthday is on their anniversary, so I just conveniently forget their anniversary when March 16th rolls around. But, after about 3 years living in Manhattan, my mom decided that this is not the best place to raise kids. I had a sister at that time, too, who had just been born, and we moved over to Maryland. And we had some family over there. My mom took a job at Johns Hopkins. My dad, worked there as well in Baltimore. And we spent a good deal of time there. I went to a Quaker school, actually, growing up. And that was actually very eye-opening for me because the Quakers, their form of prayer was actually very inclusive. If anybody has actually experienced going to a meeting house, and we used to go to meeting houses. it's been a long time now, but I think it was every Monday, if I recall. And very plain space. There's no pictures, nothing. And you would just spend your time and you do what was called centering. So all throughout elementary school, we did this thing of centering, where it's really meditation. You reflect on, your life and whatever you're doing. And this was very much in tune with what I was learning also at Sunday school. I would be going to Sunday school on a regular basis, where we would learn, about Islam. And very similar about reflecting on our values, learn how to pray, how to acknowledge God, live a good life, be honest, don't cheat, respect your parents, all these sorts of things. I mean, this is really what we were learning in Sunday school. Then we moved very briefly to Beaumont, Texas. Now, I still don't understand what my parents' thinking was when they did this. But Beaumont, Texas, for those of you who don't know, was where the movie Footloose was filmed. Okay, and that's way back too. But it's only claim to fame, really. Very small town. And let's just say I was the token Mexican. Okay, so no matter what I said, I told them my name is not Jose. They would say, okay, Jose. So that's the type of place I was in. We were there for about 9 months. That didn't last too long. It was a little bit uncomfortable. But after that, made an actually much bigger move. And for me, this was actually quite traumatic, just the initial move. And that was to Saudi Arabia. My mom and Dad had taken a position at the hospital over there in Riyadh, at one of the hospitals there. So my mom went ahead of us, actually. So she went ahead and went there. And I had visions just like all of you probably have visions if you haven't been to Saudi Arabia. Although in today's day and age, you've probably seen pictures, videos, and whatnot. This is way back. And I thought we were going to be living in a tent also. I thought there was going to be a camel outside. We're going to be living in a tent. And this was my vision. And I was Muslim. This is coming from a Muslim family and whatnot. And this was my image of what it was. My mom would write letters, and we would write back. This was before email and whatnot. Anyways, when we got to Saudi Arabia, it was kind of eye-opening. I mean, we lived on this compound that was essentially, the best way I can describe it, it's like a resort. Literally a 3-mile across resort. Like it's a walled-in area where you have people from all over living there. Mostly not Saudis. They were actually all, like Americans, Europeans, and whatnot. So it was this multicultural place, but more, from outside. And you lived in this resort world. Now this is where, this is relevant to my experience over here. I told you I was going to Sunday school and all this kind of stuff. One thing that happens over here for Muslims in America and people of many other faiths is you're paranoid. You're paranoid by the outside culture and all the different pressures that are out there and whatnot. And your parents, they're like, no, you got to go to Sunday school. You got to learn about your faith, and you've got to, you make sure that they're keeping on top of you. You can't do this, you can't do that, can't do this, because you might get in with the wrong people and whatnot. Well, they got to Saudi Arabia, and they said, okay, well, this is a Muslim country. No problem here. You'll just absorb things by osmosis or something of that sort. And frankly, we're on this compound that's quite secure, and they just let you kind of go free and do whatever you kind of want to do. So let me just say I was a, okay kid before that. I got to Saudi Arabia, and I can say that I got into pretty much anything and everything you can get into, that you would expect, to happen over here, but actually was going on over there. And yeah, I was definitely on the wrong track. I was heading to being a juvenile delinquent, basically. I mean, that's really where I was headed. It was not good. A lot of the stuff that we did. I won't go into detail on that. So I'm sure people want to hear. But why I say this is, this is the kind of person I'd become. I really was really like a juvenile delinquent, so to say. My mom took me to do the Umrah, which is the pilgrimage. It's a smaller pilgrimage to Mecca. And I went with her because she took me along. I had no choice, really, and I went. I mean, that's really how I thought about it. I I got to go, okay. And I went in literally to the great mosque there. I walked in, and men have to wear 2 towels. So I'm wearing these towels, and I'm thinking in my head, I still remember this. What I got to wear this stuff? I mean, is this still going to fall off? I mean, this is uncomfortable. That's all I was thinking about. I was not in some spiritual, mind frame or mindset or anything of the sort. Nothing. I walked in, and I saw the Kaaba, the black cube that you have seen, all of you have seen, I saw the Kaaba, and I heard this hum. I just heard this hum. And I told you, I walked in like a punk. Okay, I'm not, and I started crying. I just started crying.